I'm Joshua, and I'm an INTP. And first and foremost, I would like to say thank you for viewing this video, and happy St. Patrick's Day if you are living in the United States. The topic of this video will be on sensing, as in introverted sensing and extroverted sensing. I will talk about the sensing functions, though on my channel I have mostly spoken of the intuitive functions, not them separated from the sensing functions, but primarily about the NESI axes and about the NISE axes, because I was under the impression that many people did not understand intuition and its role it played in the psyche, and how intuition wasn't as simple as many think that it is, nor as mystical and esoteric as many have described it. However, I have had recent dialogues and interesting comments I've seen on YouTube about sensing types that has solidified for me that people are just as myopic and ignorant about what sensing is as they are about what intuition is, which surprises me because the world is comprised of mostly sensing types. So it may be because MBTI and the literature in typology is written by mostly NFs, or I don't know, and at least that's the vibe I get, or that it's written by SJs. But needless to say that there's not a lot of good information on sensing. At least the general thoughts and impressions I'm receiving from people on their thoughts of sensing are extremely shallow. Just extremely shallow. And I'm laughing because it's fairly ironic and humorous to me, the words that are attached to sensing, insofar as sensing is practical, or sensing is immediacy, or sensing is this and sensing is that, and they don't understand the cognitive functions, nor what they actually do in one's psyche, and nor what they make manifest out in the world. So it leads to some very just fallacious and misguided and off-the-mark statements. There's a great deal and a lack of accuracy in what people are saying about sensing, and I never thought I'd be the individual or the type to try and bring some light on the issue, because I'm not a dominant sensing type. But as an INTP, I can absolutely see that people unfairly mischaracterize, or people short-sightedly absolutely mischaracterize sensing and what it is and what it does. And so without further ado, and I'm laughing because this is completely humorous to me that I actually have to make this video. I'm absolutely baffled and surprised, but without further ado, this is on sensing. So first, I would like to talk about extroverted sensing, because I think that it is the one that receives the greatest amount of bastardization by analysts or by lay enthusiasts, insofar as that it is only concerned with its immediate experience. And I can say this, that it is concerned with its immediate experience in living in the world, but it's concerned with its immediate experience in living in the world because it is concerned with motory and intellectual excitation. It's not just being about what one sees, tastes, and touches. And many people think that sensing is not something that is within the psyche. I would like to turn one's attention to what perception is fundamentally for the human animal, and say that whatever you're seeing out in the world is a representation that your brain creates. It's not as if there is, it's not as if we can say for certain that the world exists. It's not as if we can say that. or that we have, that are concrete and immediate experiences, are things that we actually are experiencing in the world, and the universe isn't one big hologram. And sensing types are going to hate that, per se. They may not. They actually may even entertain that idea and want to run under a waterfall and think, what is this hologram going to do to me? It's not even, they are concerned primarily with motory excitation and the greatest magnitude of stimulus that they can receive from the external world. And whether or not that stimulus, it's due to the fact that extroverted sensing is extroverted per se in nature, that you find them out in the world and not necessarily in books, because books cannot necessarily, or written text does not necessarily, now if the written text were colored, wasn't in black and white, if the written text was colored in black and white, projected itself, was lit up in some manner, or changed colors per se as you read it, then you might find an extroverted sensor into the text, but it's not because they're dumb, it's because they are following the information that has the greatest magnitude of excitation. They do what every person does insofar as that they take information in from the environment and differentiate it and see where it fits in terms of their motivational schema and goals. So they absolutely are, like every other type, fundamentally in being intellectually based, because all psychology and all action, even physical bodily action, stems from the mind and is projected through the nervous system and out through the body in a web-like manner, but it all is neurologically based and is all cognitively based. Extroverted sensing, even your sight, because human sight, if you look at the substrates for vision within the brain, there are spatial sensory modalities contained within it. It means this, that the same substrates and sensory elements you use for touch and spatial orientation as in your immediate tactical experience is within your visual system and is shaping your perception of the world. It's that your brain is creating what you're seeing, and you can't know it's there completely objectively. But sensors, they're not necessarily concerned with the objective world and objective reality as people say. They are concerned with the objective world insofar as that they want to live in it per se, because that's where they draw the greatest amount of excitation and they can find the greatest magnitude of stimuli. They are extroverted sensors, do have an extroverted nature to them, and the neurobiology or neurophysiology of extrovertedness is being a part of the sympathetic nervous system, insofar as that it is the fight or flight response per se, that or at least the side of the sympathetic nervous system or the autonomic nervous system that is that governs the extroverted sensing type, I think, more heavily, and they do have a greater influence of dopamine and adrenaline in their neurochemical makeup. So they are driven to be responsive in the environment and to be goal-orientated and goal-seeking, but their goal fundamentally is the magnitude of excitation. It's not, I need to see it, I need to touch it, I need to taste it, per se, because you can look at phone sex, per se, and phone sex is tying physical excitation with intellectual stimulus to create a palpable physical response within the body. You can see this in women's sexual drive, per se, is that it is cognitive excitation that gets a physical response. All extroverted sensors are like this. It is a cognitive excitation, something that catches their attention in the environment by way of their immediate sensory inputs. It's not, they have immediate sensory inputs, but it's like the world is shocking them, and they like to be shocked and excited by the world. That's why they live in the world, but they want to be shocked and excited by the world, and it elicits physical responses in their body to act and to do. But it's not so simple as sensors are completely based on their taste, touch, and smell. It's not, the taste, touch, and smell is there for the brain's enjoyment or the brain's activity or leading them in a certain direction to achieve certain metrics and goals. That's what it is, and it's to say that no function runs completely unfettered on its own, even if it's the dominant function. There are other things that are going to influence it and shape the way it is. That's why I find it so damn interesting when I talk to people and they characterize sensors in a certain way. Sensors are definitely motivated differently than intuitive types, and it's because they are concerned by, at least extroverted sensing is concerned by the magnitude of excitement or the magnitude of stimuli, and it's because they're extroverted in nature, and extroversion is much more retardant to stimulus than introversion. Extroverts need greater amounts of excitation to be engaged in the environment. Whether they're intuitive or sensing individuals, it's why you will find an INTP doing things that will look a lot like an extroverted sensor at times, because they are pursuing external excitation and essentially messing with things. And extroverted sensing, it is raw insofar as that it is primarily concerned with its draws its intellectual excitation from the external environment and from the magnitude of the events that are impressed. And I'm using the word impressed because it is their subjective experience that their brain's constructing. So it's through that experience, and whatever blows and imbues itself with the greatest amount of excitement is really what they go towards and what they're concerned with. And extroverted sensing, it certainly can be tactical and physical, but the fact that it's tactical and physical, don't let that be the thing that makes you think that it's all that much different from I suppose intuition. It is different from intuition, but it's not just completely foreign and different in terms of the general complex of a human being. It's to say that extroverted sensing is embodied, but so is introverted feeling. I just don't understand necessarily the lack of understanding and the myopic analyses that take place. Extroverted sensing is empirical per se by its nature, but its empirical governing is more based on its need and desires to take in a breadth of experiences, or a breadth of external stimulus and excitation. It's the introverted intuitive aspects of the functional axes that make the empirical data means for its judgment but extroverted sensing is not necessarily concerned with making pictures and judgments about things or coming to conclusions about things, and its main function is to take in things. It is perception. It's not judgment. It's not what a lot of people think. It's just drinking in experience and seeking out excitation in the environment. Roughly, that's all it is drinking in its subjective experience through an objective means and taking in the greatest amount of stimulus or the most interesting stimulus to that individual it can take in. That's all it's trying to do. It doesn't mean that they don't like mathematics. It doesn't mean that they don't like whatever someone would think because they're sensing types. I don't know what other functions necessarily come in tandem with it, per se, insofar as if you're looking at an ESFP, you're looking at an ISFP, there's certainly variation. ESTPs or ISTPs, just because they're sensors doesn't guarantee a lot of things. I think that the barricade that intuitive types have with sensing types in conversation is that they are driven by their immediate experience. They're not driven to go beyond their immediate experience. They don't find excitation beyond their immediate experience. They live in the moment and they live in the now. That is not just purely through senses or purely through tactical, and when I say tactical, I mean touching. It's not that. The extroverted sensor could not be touching anything, and it could be looking at something from a distance and just thinking about what it would be like to experience that thing and draw a great deal of excitation and even create a physical response from them. And it's you see it in so many arenas and in so many ways. And I brought up the phone sex illustration to convey this point that it is in the now, it is in the lived experience immediately for them, but it does not show up in just, I need to touch things, I need to taste things, I need to only see things. That's not it. And that's so cheap and shallow a description of what extroverted sensing does and what it brings manifest out into the world. And what extroverted sensing is driven to bring manifest out into the world is a multitude of experiences that can stimulate and excite one's senses. It wants the individual wants to be objectively excited so that they know how to respond and act in the environment because their nervous system is set up to respond and to act in the environment, and they want to do that. They're receiving their cues from the external world by way of their sensing. They're not, it's a question, extroverted sensing, if people really analyze it and look at it, it's a question of ethics just as much as the intuitives have questions of ethics, or the thinking type has question of ethics. They just do not answer the questions of how I ought to act or the best way for action by way of logical deduction or intuition. They don't do that. Maybe they do. Maybe they're an ESTP. Maybe they're an ISTP. So it's a blend of things that they make their ethics, which I think all people are concerned with ethics insofar as how one ought to act. but they're receiving their cues, and they need to receive their cues from the external world. The excitations are telling them whether or not to dodge left, to dodge right, to get aggressive, to get this, to get that. They're being cerebrally stimulated and excited by the world. They're listening to the world and taking it in to make decisions and to be goal orientated and to be reactive. They want to be reactive. They don't want to be necessarily deliberative, because it is very much driven in them. If you're not reactive, you die. That's just a fundamental aspect to them. I don't see how that's just only, they only can deal with what they touch, taste, see, or hear. That's not it. That's not it at all. That's not. That's such a simple picture. Try and think of the cognitive functions as fundamental aspects of human nature, and then look at the types that are dominant in one function as the archetypal representation of these fundamental aspects to human nature. Not that they're alien things apart, or that they're I don't know, just simply patterns of behavior and thought. Typology is about the why, not about the what. It's about the deeper psychological motivators and neurophysiological and biological aspects to something that makes it what you see. And that tells you what it is. But not whatever I don't know, what a lot of people, I don't know. It's just a lot of things I hear and read, I just think are stupid. Well, I'll just be honest and say that. I think they're very stupid. They're just short-sighted, and they don't, at least to me, they just don't do it justice, per se. And I don't know necessarily if I'm doing it justice, but this is the first time I've decided to go here because I think somebody needs to. That's what I'll say about extroverted sensing. Now moving on to, well, I will say this too, and how extroverted sensing shows up, per se, in the greater meta-cognitive aspects, or the metaphysical and spiritual aspects to things. Because that's one thing that I find that a lot of people think too, that extroverted sensors, they don't have a sense of spirituality, and they're extremely secular, or that they're not that they just don't try and have a cognitive and intellectual or spiritual or metaphysical landscape going on in them. They do, particularly if they are TPs, and if you only get ESTPs and ESFPs, they're going to be the dominant extroverted sensing. You get STPs and SFPs, they're going to be the dominant sensing types, extroverted sensing types, and they make those leaps in the immediate environment, or in a visceral something, in an embodied experience. And then it takes them, the embodied experience takes them to the abstraction, per se, or the mental representation that they're going to manipulate. And they use the world as a mental representation for them, or to shorthand having mental representations. That's what sensing does. But it's not like it's not trying to figure out things and it's not trying to think. Per se, when you see strange rituals, and like in Christianity, they drink the blood of Christ and they eat his body. I think it's intuitives that made the metaphor with the wine and the crackers. But it's fundamentally an extroverted sensing thing that you would drink wine and eat bread or crackers or whatever. That the spiritual aspect is embedded and embodied in the physical and tactile world. Um, when you have pantheism, that's something that's very much, as much as people like to say that's intuitive types. No, it's not intuitive types. That's not. Intuition's more saying that the trees are imperfect. There's some ideal tree out there, or these trees remind me of some greater idea of things being born or dying, or these things being connected to something. But spirits being in trees, and then the emotion of the physical world is directed by spirits and angels and things like that. That's fundamentally an SFP vantage point in view of the world. That's not NF. That's not that's not NT. That's SFP. The wearing in the enactment of rituals, insofar as that you will act out that Native American tribes would wear the eagle's feathers and dance, and shamans and seances by throwing ash on you and pricking you with poisonous notes and shaking the stick around your body to elicit a seizure from you, to drive out the bad spirits, or to have some sort of spiritual transformation in you. That is extroverted sensing. Extroverted sensing, when you find it in the spiritual world, is far more charismatic in trying to bring the spirit into the lived and now experience, and does some fairly scary things. I'll just say that. You get that from extroverted sensing. That's not necessarily intuition. Intuition is just as comfortable with having the abstract and intellectual manifestation of the thing, and it not needing to be manifest and come into the lived world. The spiritual aspect of things will stop a lot of times in the emotions and in the thoughts of the intuitive type, but in the extroverted sensing type, they never stay there. They get out in their practices. They are the ones that create the practice and elicit the practices. That's what they do. Now on to introverted sensing, per se, and introverted sensing is one's ability to receive the inflections and hues from their immediate experience. Insofar as this, introverted sensing is associative in its characteristics, much like extroverted intuition. And it may be the fact that extroverted intuition is a part of its axes, but both of them fundamentally associate. Introverted sensing, however, associates experiences and is concerned with watching one thing over and over again, or experiencing certain tactile and sensual aspects over and over again to create an understanding or codification insofar as behavioral wisdom towards and about the thing. Introverted sensors are shy to experience per se because they're introverted in nature, and introversion can be overstimulated and is very sensitive to stimulus, so they do not want to take in the breadth of experience, but they do take in experiences that do elicit powerful effects on the individuals, and they're only looking to find the best and the greatest experiences that they can find in the world, or the most poignant and standoutish ones. They're not like the extroverted sensor. The extroverted sensor is concerned with magnitude, but it's concerned with the breadth of magnitude. It's not concerned with a very deep and poignancy of magnitude of experience, and the deep, poignant standpoint of magnitude of experience comes from introverted sensing, and they collect these things because they are very much hoarders. They're hoarders of their experience, and they're hoarders of the things that leave the greatest impressions on them. They collect these things and they make a map or a codification. Introverted sensing is the thing that's concerned with codification and administrative and bureaucratic processes. That's what it does. It's saying, for example, if we experience a hurricane and the hurricane devastated our house, the thing that which we live in and get protection and comfort from, then we need to now think of a system in a way to prevent that from happening again, or to mitigate to the greatest extent at which we are physically and intellectually possible for that to be as earth-shattering and devastating as it was previously. They are the creators of tradition, but they're the creators of tradition because they're trying to protect the impressions that they hold sacred and dear to them. It is why sacredity, or what is sacred, is so interlocked and interwoven with what is traditional, because the idea of the sacred comes somewhat from introverted feeling. I think is ironed out. I think it comes from the introverted feeling. It's ironed out by extroverted feeling, and it's kept consistent and maintained with introverted sensing. And introverted sensing, I think, also in conjunction with introverted feeling, play a role in the creation of sacredity, or the creation of hallowed things and hallowed images or hallowed representations, insofar as that how they show up is that items collect meaning. They imbue meaning into objects and items out in the world. Because the objects leave impressions on them, or what it does is elicit in them whatever memory is stored in them about a chain of events that are loosely associated with that item, by way of, for whatever reason, they could see wide open plains and fields, and that will take them to the fond experiences that they had with a dear loved one who's passed away, or blue latex balloons. Anytime that they see them, brings the impression and the memory and joy that they had when they had their first son, and they brought him home from the hospital, and he was draped in baby blue, and they had latex balloons, and for whatever reason, it makes the associations by way of those impressions by the things out in the immediate world that have the greatest amount of connection to the meaning structures that they're creating, and they essentially want to protect what's meaningful to them. That's what they want to do. And meaningful to them, because they are oftentimes paired with well, I should think about that, because it depends if they're an STJ or they're an SFJ. But meaningful to them can be personal, or it can be communal. And they are the Kiersey calls them the guardians by way of their motivation to experience what's meaningful to them in the world, and essentially to avoid being overstimulated in what we see and their need for comfort, because they don't want to be overstimulated, but they do enjoy stimulus to an extent, but they only want the best stimulus, so they will be concerned, they will look bourgeoisie in being concerned with their indulgence and intake of certain things. They will be picky, per se, or connoisseurs, or I think those are good adjectives, and they will be this way, and they want to maintain and protect these things. these things do enough for them, and they repress extroverted intuition, so they don't see a need necessarily, or they don't have a motivation to be drawn outside of them, so they like their homely space, and they like to protect what's meaningful to them and dear to them, or what's meaningful and dear to the communities or the individuals that they care about. And that's introverted sensing. And introverted sensing is codification, even in my own thoughts. Introverted thinking in my thoughts makes it makes the concepts, and it tests the propositions. It makes the concepts, it tests the propositions, it creates propositions by way of whatever extroverted intuition and introverted sensing are collecting from the environment. They are the empirical aspects of my cognition, but introverted sensing is doing the fine detail codification of things. It is helping me create the elaborate system, and is the thing, along with introverted thinking, that is fundamentally skeptical in me. That's one thing that people don't realize about introverted sensing, is that it's not a trusting function. No introverted function is trusting insofar as that it doesn't want to be influenced by external things. But my skepticism, my bent towards analyses and judgment comes from introverted thinking, but my skepticism and my doubt comes fundamentally from introverted sensing. And it's interesting because introverted sensors, dominant ones, don't necessarily like new things and new people, because